to change is always a criticism of bureaucracy. You know, it just gets kind of hidebound and it's difficult to change that. Do you have any specific recommendations about perhaps consolidating some of these programs, bringing the HUD grant program under FEMA? You've outlined the problem, but do you have any solutions for us?
Yes, ma'am. I think certainly it's not GAO's place to to make those kind of policy decisions. That's up to Congress to decide and the different oversight committees if you want to consolidate the programs. It's definitely an option. But until that happens, I think there are other options to help address this issue. For example, we know that in these large disasters, we know the programs that are used in recovery, and we know how they've operated in the past. And you can make changes to those programs so they're better synchronized to work together instead of just being surprised after the disaster. So in the case of HUD, for example, we recommended recently that Congress permanently authorize the program. That's been a challenge. Each time Congress appropriates money to HUD, HUD basically has to recreate the program in a Federal Register notice, which you all probably know federal rulemaking is not the easiest process. So every time that happens, that has to occur. So whether that is authorized in HUD or another program, I think we need to have a permanently authorized program so we don't have to create this from scratch each time.
Thank you. Mr. Byard, another problem that seems to come up over and over again are the workforce shortfalls. People are hired temporarily, they go work on a disaster, then they go home or go back to wherever they're from. We're 1,000 people short, you have to gear up every time something happens. Do you have any recommendations for how we might address that shortage?
Yes, ma'am. That's it's a definite challenge, as you've pointed out. I do think it's important to note, though, that staffing challenges are primarily or really fully on the recovery end of that. We have the staff necessary in the way we do our business from a response standpoint. All the available staff is ready to respond, and it's also important to note that FEMA is a coordinating element, so we have just tremendous partnerships throughout the federal government to effectively respond to any disaster that the nation faces. So we do have shortfalls, but I want to make sure that we understand from a response standpoint to that immediate life-saving ability, FEMA is prepared to do that and will continue to prepare to do that. The type of individuals and staff that you highlighted are disaster reservists. And I must say, ma'am, they are the backbone of what we do. They do tremendous work in all of your communities. So one of the areas that we're looking at to increase that is looking at a regional reservist cadre. So you have certain individuals that definitely want to do great work for the American people that we do, but they may not want to travel all the way across the country. So, for example, in our hurricane-prone regions, we're looking at how do we bring on retired engineers, for example, that understand bridges and roads, that want to work just in that area. That's one area that we're doing. We're also, as working through Congress, increasing our recovery staffing. We're bringing on about 1,000 a year right now. But we also got to look at our retention. Bringing new staff on is just one thing, and we've made a concerted effort. The acting administrator, as well as myself, have challenged our leadership to find out why our staff may be leaving and how do we increase and keep that staff here. So,
what about the possibility of legislation that would guarantee if somebody left a job, say working in the Montana Wildlife Division, to go fight a fire in California, that they are guaranteed they'll have that job when they come back?
Ma'am, that's not for me to
No, but you could say if that might work or not.
There's a lot of complexities in it. I guess what you're laying out is similar to what our Department of Defense does with the National Guard and so forth.
Right.
I would have to know a little more about that before I commented on one way or the other. But I do think that as we look at certain jobs programs and especially one of the innovative measures we may want to look at is with our two-year universities, our trade schools, of really teaching public assistance program. These are well-paying jobs that are out there, and we've got plenty of work to go around. So I think there may be some other avenues to look at because we want to not only retain or build our reservist cadre, but we need to retain that knowledge for future disasters.
I think maybe we need to look at veterans, too, more closely and how we put some veterans in these positions. But
I agree. As a veteran, I agree, ma'am.
Just briefly, we're spending nearly $300 million to renovate and consolidate DHS headquarters, yet we don't have a secretary, a deputy secretary, a general counsel, or an undersecretary. I just worry that without leadership at the top, some of these recommendations that you're making or that we're considering may just fall through the cracks.
Ma'am.
Yeah, that's all right. I'm out of time, but
Yes, ma'am.
think about that. I'll now recognize Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Chairman.